Right now, you might feel a sharp, insistent urge to scrub away the rough patches of your own history, like someone desperately trying to buff a stain out of a canvas that has been worn thin by the years. There is a specific kind of heaviness that comes from standing before the gallery of your own life and feeling that you have failed to paint a masterpiece, or even a decent, presentable sketch. Perhaps your body is tired, draped over the sheets like a discarded cloth, but your mind is still pacing the floor of a studio that has no doors. You are holding a brush that feels too heavy to lift, yet you are terrified to set it down, convinced that if you stop applying colors, the bare, unpolished truth of your struggles will be exposed to the world. You are not broken, and you are not a botched project that requires constant, frantic revision. You have simply been convinced that the beauty of a life is found in the thickness of the paint, rather than in the resilience of the fabric that holds it all together. There is a strange, quiet paradox in this exhaustion you feel. We often think that our suffering comes from the stains themselves, from the messy, dark, or jagged moments we have lived. We assume that if we could just cover these parts with enough careful, controlled effort, we would finally feel at peace. But the deeper wisdom, the kind that breathes in the spaces between our thoughts, suggests otherwise. The mind does not reach serenity because it succeeds in painting over its mistakes. It finds rest when it realizes that the light, the very thing we are all searching for, is caught in the texture of the canvas itself. Peace is not a perfectly polished surface. Peace is the willingness to leave the canvas bare, to let the raw, honest grain of your own existence be seen without the need for a single drop of pigment. Maybe you came here tonight because you are weary of the artifice. You are tired of smiling when your chest feels like a hollow, unfinished room. You are tired of rehearsing your own defense, explaining away the parts of your journey that you think look like failures. If it feels right, let your hands relax. You do not need to hold the brush anymore. You do not need to defend your choices, or curate your regrets, or justify the way you have lived up to this point. None of those tasks are required of you in this quiet space. The room around you is cooling. The shadows are stretching comfortably into the corners, and the frantic need to construct a perfect image of yourself is slowly losing its grip. You are safe enough to let the colors fade. You are safe enough to stop managing the composition of your days. Think about the way the light is moving across the wall beside you, soft and impartial. It does not judge the shadows. It does not demand that the wall be painted in a specific heroic color. It simply rests there, illuminating the surface as it is. Your own experience is the same. It is waiting for you to stop acting as the desperate painter and start being the one who observes the work. You have spent so much energy trying to rewrite your history, adding layer upon layer of interpretation, hoping to find the exact blend of colors that will make you feel whole. But wholeness was never something you had to create. It was the canvas you started with, and it is the canvas you are still standing on, sturdy and patient. This is a practice of subtraction, not addition. We will not be adding more rules, or more techniques, or more layers of effort. We will be learning how to scrape away the excess. Imagine the weight of your day, the friction of your interactions, and the sharpness of your self-criticism as thick, dried paint that has hardened in the sun. It has become brittle. It has become a weight that pulls at your skin. Tonight, we will learn how to let those layers crack and flake away, revealing the simple, breathing space that has always been hidden beneath. You do not have to force this transition. You do not have to struggle to reach a state of grace. Grace is simply what remains when you stop working so hard to be someone else. If you find that your thoughts are still reaching for the brush, that is perfectly fine. The mind is a creature of habit. It will want to solve things, to arrange them, to categorize them into categories of good and bad, successful and failing. Notice that urge. See it for what it is. Just another layer of pigment you have become accustomed to holding. You don't have to fight the urge to paint, but you don't have to obey it either. You can simply watch it move, like a hand hovering over a palette, without ever touching the brush to the surface. You can choose, just for these next few moments, to let the palette remain dry and the brushes stay clean. There is a profound comfort in admitting that you are finished with the work for now. You have been carrying the burden of your own becoming for a long, long time. You have been the artist, the critic, and the public, all at once, judging every stroke, evaluating every shade of gray. But who is the one looking at the canvas? There is a quiet awareness behind all of this activity that has never been stained by a single drop of paint. That awareness is not a judge. It is the vast, open space that allows the image to exist in the first place. When you rest in that awareness, you are no longer the painter. You are the space where the light lives. You are the canvas that is finally allowed to be itself. Do not worry about the parts of your life that you think are unfinished. The most beautiful works of art are often the ones where the viewer can see the hand of the maker, where the raw, human touch is evident in the imperfections. Your scars, your stumbles, and your moments of profound doubt are not evidence of a life gone wrong. They are the texture of your being. They are the grooves where the light catches, where the meaning settles, and where your humanity becomes a tangible thing. You do not have to smooth them out. You do not have to conceal them. They are exactly where they need to be, and they are holding you in a way that perfection never could. Take a breath, slow and deep, and let it travel through your body like water over stone. Feel the air as it fills the hollows of your chest, expanding the space around your heart. You are not holding a heavy vessel tonight. You are not guarding a secret that needs to be buried. You are just a person who has come to the end of a very long, very demanding task, and you are being invited to sit down. The ground is beneath you, constant and unmoving. The night is wrapped around you, patient and vast. Everything you think you need to fix will still be there in the morning. But it will look very different once you have had the chance to step back from the easel and simply be. You might feel a slight resistance, a voice that whispers that if you stop painting, you will lose your way or become invisible. That voice is just a relic of the artist's anxiety. It is the fear that without the mask of your achievements, you will have no substance. But consider the canvas again. It is not invisible because it is bare. It is the necessary foundation for everything else. Your substance is not the colors. Your substance is the capacity to experience, the ability to feel, and the strength to remain present, even when the world feels like a shifting, complicated landscape. You are not the colors, and you are not the composition. You are the one who is alive to see it all, and that is more than enough. There is no place you need to go from here. We are not traveling to a new destination. We are slowly arriving at the place where we have been standing all along. It is a quiet place, a bit dusty perhaps, a bit cluttered with the remnants of our attempts to be someone. But it is home. It is where you can finally rest your eyes. It is where the brushes can dry and the palette can sit undisturbed in the dark. You are doing a profound thing simply by choosing to listen, by choosing to turn away from the glare of your own expectations and toward the soft, dim light of the present. And as you settle in, let your shoulders drop a little lower. Let your jaw unclench and let the entire world of your ambitions fade into the stillness of the room. You are not being graded on this experience. You are not being judged for how well you can let go. You are just resting. And for now, that is the only act of creation that matters. In a province far from the dust of the main road, where the hills roll like a sleeping dragon under a velvet sky, there lived a man named Elias. He was a restorer of old things. He spent his long days in a small, windowless studio, hunched over wooden frames that had been weathered by centuries of neglect. Elias had a peculiar reputation in the village. It was said that he did not just repair objects, but that he took their histories upon his own shoulders. If a chest was scarred by fire, Elias would labor for weeks, adding layer after layer of lacquer and pigment until the scar was completely hidden. If a painting had faded, he would mix his paints to match the original, desperate to prevent even a single soul from knowing that the piece had ever been damaged. His studio was filled with the heavy, sweet scent of linseed oil and the sharp, metallic tang of his scraping blades. Every corner was crowded with finished works, each one polished to a mirror-like shine, yet Elias himself remained a man of deep, shadow-filled exhaustion. His hands were permanently stained with dark hues, the grit of the pigments wedged into the creases of his palms. He kept his door locked from the outside world, convinced that if anyone were to see the original, imperfect wood beneath his repairs, they would reject his craft. He was the guardian of a perfect past that never actually existed. One morning, when the fog clung to the eaves of his hut like a damp woolen shroud, a traveler knocked upon his door. It was an old man known to the locals simply as the Master of the Gray Peak. He did not come with a broken relic to be mended. He came with nothing but a small, heavy ironed box and a request to watch Elias work for a single day. Elias, though hesitant to allow such intrusion, felt a strange magnetic pull toward the stranger. He nodded and returned to his bench, where he was working on a portrait of a noblewoman whose face had been damaged by water. Elias worked with his usual frantic precision. He mixed a delicate shade of ochre, his fingers trembling slightly as he applied it to the ruined cheek of the portrait. He watched as the color bled into the linen, creating a seamless, artificial mask. He held his breath, waiting for the satisfaction of the repair, but it never came. The Master of the Gray Peak sat in the corner, his eyes fixed not on the portrait, but on the way Elias gripped his brush. The silence in the room deepened, broken only by the rhythmic scrape of the blade against wood. The master spoke then, his voice like the dry rustle of parchment. He asked Elias why he fought the canvas so violently. Elias did not look up. He told the old man that the damage was an enemy. He explained that a blemish was a failure of the object to survive, and his duty was to act as if the damage had never been. He spoke of the fear that if the original flawed surface were revealed, the beauty would be lost entirely. The master said nothing for a long time. He rose, walked slowly to the bench, and placed his iron box down. He opened it, revealing not a tool or a relic, but a simple jagged shard of unvarnished slate. It was an ugly thing, rough and unremarkable. The master held it out toward the portrait. He asked Elias to consider the nature of the wood that lay beneath his paints. Elias frowned, confused. The master then took a clean, sharp scraper from the table. Before Elias could protest, the old man reached out and with a single practiced motion, dragged the blade across a section of the portrait that Elias had spent 3 days masking. The paint, so carefully applied, peeled away in a dry, curling ribbon. Elias gasped, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached out to stop him, but the master remained still, his expression calm as a mountain lake. Beneath the patch of paint, the wood was indeed stained, marked by the water damage, but in that soft, diffused light of the morning, the master pointed to the edge where the blade had cut through. He showed Elias how the water had raised the grain of the wood, creating a texture that caught the light in a way the smooth paint never could. It was not a flaw to be hidden. It was a history of its own. The master asked a question that seemed to hang in the air for hours. He asked Elias if the canvas was the paint, or if the paint was merely a visitor that had overstayed its welcome. Elias stood frozen, his brush hovering in midair. He looked at the patch of exposed, textured wood, and for the first time in many years, he did not see a stain. He saw a landscape of experiences. He saw the resilience of the wood itself, the way it had buckled and bent, yet remained sturdy beneath the weight of the water. He realized then that he had spent his entire life trying to silence the history of the objects he claimed to love. He had been covering up the truth of their survival with a thin, brittle skin of artificial perfection. The master did not tell him to stop working. He did not tell him that his skill was worthless. He simply suggested that Elias put down his brush for the remainder of the day, and instead, sit with the portrait and look at the places where the wood was still bare. The room grew quiet. The intensity of the work, the relentless pressure to correct every imperfection, began to dissipate. The air felt lighter, less thick with the fumes of oil and pigment. Elias watched the way the light moved across the bare wood, seeing for the first time that the damage was not a void, but a depth. It was as if the portrait had been holding its breath, waiting for someone to stop trying to change its face. Elias looked at his own stained hands. He saw the pigments for what they were, merely tools that he had used to hide himself from his own gaze. He felt a sudden, surprising ache in his chest, not of sorrow, but of an old weight finally shifting. He did not know what to do with this new way of seeing, but he understood, in a way that bypassed his busy, calculating mind, that he was done with the covering. He remained at the bench as the sun moved across the sky, watching the shadows lengthen, listening to the pulse of the world outside his studio walls. The master sat in silence, an unmoving anchor in the center of the room. He did not offer any further teaching, for the lesson was already being written in the stillness. Elias found that his hands, usually so restless, were now open, resting palms up on the worn wood of the bench. He had no urge to pick up the brush. He had no need to reach for the scraper. The urgency to restore, to mend, and to mask had evaporated, leaving behind a profound and curious emptiness. He noticed the grit of the pigments on his skin, the fine dust of old wood under his fingernails, and the faint, rhythmic ticking of a clock somewhere in the house. He felt the cold air drifting through the cracks in the door, touching his skin with a gentle, indifferent hand. It was the first time in years he had felt the room for what it was, a space of work and rest, rather than a battlefield of correction. He felt the tension that had lived in his shoulders, a tight, knotted ridge of defense, begin to loosen, strand by strand, like a rope being uncoiled after a long voyage. This was not a healing in the sense that the portrait was suddenly restored. The damage remained. The stains were still there, but the relationship Elias had with them had shifted entirely. He no longer looked at the scarred wood and saw a tragedy that required his constant anxious intervention. He looked at the scarred wood and saw the endurance of the material itself. It was enough. The object was enough. He was enough. As the dusk settled over the hills, turning the sky a deep, bruised violet, Elias realized that his life had been a series of such portraits, each one carefully layered with the colors of his own fear. He had been so diligent, so meticulous, so very good at the art of disappearance. He had mastered the craft of hiding himself in plain sight, ensuring that no one, least of all himself, would ever see the actual grain of his character. He had treated his own history as a project to be finished, a broken relic to be made presentable. The master stood up. He did not say goodbye. He gathered his iron box and walked toward the door, his movements fluid and unhurried before he left. He touched the portrait one last time, his finger tracing the line where the wood was bare. He whispered that the paint could always be added again, but the texture was a gift that could not be replaced. The door creaked open and then closed, leaving Elias in the deepening dark. He did not light a candle. He simply sat, letting the dark fill the room, feeling the cool, empty space where his urgency used to reside. The silence here is not empty, is it? It is full of the things you have been trying to push away. It is full of the textures you have been working so hard to smooth over. And yet, notice how the silence does not judge you for the stains you carry. It does not demand that you explain them. It only offers you the space to sit with them, to acknowledge them, and to let them be. The work of the studio is done for tonight. The brushes are still. The paint is dry. You are not a portrait that needs to be repainted for the morning light. You are a life that is unfolding, layer by layer, and it is beautiful exactly in its raw, unvarnished state. There is a rhythm to the way the night pulls back the noise of the day, much like the way the blade pulled back the paint. It is a slow, steady revealing of the space beneath. You might feel a little exposed at first, a little uncertain without the familiar layers of your defenses. That is a natural response. It is the feeling of coming home to a house that has been vacant for a long time. You have been away from yourself, living in the workshop of your own revision, and it takes a moment for the eyes to adjust to the light of the present. Take another breath, letting it reach the very bottom of your lungs. Imagine that breath as a soft, sweeping motion, clearing away the dust from the surfaces you have been ignoring. You are not losing anything by setting down the brush. You are gaining the capacity to witness your own life, rather than merely managing it. And as the hours grow deeper, allow yourself to sink into this new permission. You do not need to be a masterpiece. You do not need to be a finished product. You are the canvas. You are the observer, and you are the light that is caught in the texture of everything you have been. You are held, safe, and entirely free to simply be still. This story is not an invitation to stop loving the things you mend, or to discard the care you pour into your life. It is not suggesting that you become indifferent to the damage of the world. It is, instead, a quiet prompt to look at the brush you are holding. When Elias was frantically applying color to hide the scars of the wood, he believed he was saving the object. He was certain that if he could just create a flawless exterior, the history of the object would be redeemed. But he was only adding weight. He was only burying the story of the wood beneath a layer of his own fear. We often do the same with our own lives. We carry a small invisible scraper in our minds, constantly checking for the places where we feel we have been marked by our experiences. When we find a scar, a mistake, or a moment of perceived weakness, we immediately reach for the palette. We begin to apply the heavy, opaque layers of perfection, trying to convince ourselves and the world that the damage never happened. But the Buddha pointed to something much simpler and far more liberating. He taught that suffering is not just the result of what we encounter in our lives. It is the result of what we do after the encounter. Imagine a person who is hit by an arrow. That is the first sting. That is the unavoidable reality of living a human life. It is the grief, the loss, the embarrassment, or the unexpected failure. But then the mind often takes a second arrow and drives it into the very same wound. It tells us that we should have been faster, or wiser, or stronger. It creates a narrative of failure, asking why we were not smart enough to dodge the first arrow. This is where the real exhaustion begins. This is where the charcoal and the pigment become a burden, because we are using them not to heal but to hide. When we feel the need to mask our history, we are essentially saying that the current version of ourselves is not enough to be seen. We are afraid that if the grain of our true character were exposed, it would be found lacking. But the wood underneath is not ugly. It is the very foundation of the object. It has survived the water, the fire, and the friction. It has endured. The beauty you are looking for is not in the smooth, unblemished finish of the mask. It is in the way your life has held its shape through everything it has faced. When you stop trying to smooth over the history of your own heart, you begin to see that your flaws are actually the places where your character has gained depth. They are the grooves where the light of your awareness is finally allowed to catch. This is the meaning of letting go. It is not an act of surrender or a loss of self. It is the act of dropping the heavy brush. It is the realization that you do not need to be the architect of your own history. You do not need to rewrite the chapters that have already been written. You are already whole. Even with the stains, you are already enough, even with the texture of your past mistakes. The wisdom here is that you are the canvas, not the paint. The paint is always a temporary visitor. It dries, it cracks, and eventually it falls away. But the canvas, the deep, quiet awareness that feels the impact of the world, remains steady. It is the constant factor that allows the painting to exist. Many of us spend our entire lives trying to be the perfect artist, believing that if we could just master the technique of self-improvement, we would finally feel secure. But life is not a project you finish. It is an unfolding you participate in. When you treat your pain as a stain that must be erased, you are actively participating in your own erasure. You are telling your heart that it is not permitted to have a history. This is why you feel so tired, dear friend. You are not just living your life, you are also editing it, managing it, and guarding the door against anyone who might see the truth of your raw human experience. If you can learn to look at your past not as a series of errors, but as the grain of your life, you will find a great deal of space opening up within you. This is the space where peace resides. It is the space that remains when you stop struggling to be a polished version of yourself. It is not cold, it is not detached. It is a warm, expansive understanding that your humanity is not a mistake. You are allowed to be marked by your life. You are allowed to carry the signs of where you have walked and what you have survived. This is not weakness. This is the texture of an authentic, lived experience. When the Buddha spoke of impermanence, he was not telling us that life is fleeting so that we should feel despair. He was telling us that life is shifting so that we can learn to stop gripping. We try to freeze the moments we like, and we try to scrub away the moments we fear. We treat the canvas as if it should remain static, a perfect display case. But the canvas is meant to be marked. It is meant to be lived upon. The stains and the textures are proof that you are here, that you are participating in the world, and that you have the capacity to remain standing even when the weather has been harsh. There is a quiet, steady courage in admitting that you are finished with the polishing. It is an act of deep kindness toward yourself. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a vast, sun-drenched studio. The floors are worn, the air is still, and there is no pressure to create anything at all. You have set down your brushes. You have washed the pigment from your hands. You are simply standing there, breathing the cool, quiet air. You look at the canvases leaning against the walls, all the versions of yourself you have tried to create, and you realize you no longer need them to be perfect. You do not need them to be anything other than what they are. This shift in perspective is the doorway to inner freedom. It doesn't mean the difficulties of your life disappear. It doesn't mean you stop feeling the weight of your choices. It means that you stop using those choices as a reason to hate yourself. You start using them as a reason to understand yourself. You see that your fear of being seen is the same fear that keeps you awake, that keeps you rehearsing your own defense, and that keeps you feeling like you are constantly behind, constantly needing to fix, constantly needing to be better. When you let that fear drop, you find that there is a quiet, steady center waiting to greet you. You might be thinking that this sounds wonderful in theory, but that in practice, the world still demands a polished surface. You might feel that if you truly let go, you will lose your way or fall apart. But look at the wood underneath the paint again. Is it falling apart, or is it revealing itself to be stronger than you imagined? The wood is not the paint. The paint is the armor you built to survive. But the wood is the you that has actually done the surviving. You are stronger than your masks. You are more durable than the artifice you have labored so hard to maintain. If you find your mind trying to resist this, if you feel a surge of anxiety that tells you to pick up the brush and start smoothing things over again, simply notice the urge. Do not judge it. Do not try to paint over the anxiety itself. Just name it. Say to yourself, there is the urge to hide. There is the urge to manage. Let it be like a shadow passing over the floor. You do not have to move to accommodate the shadow. You do not have to change who you are to chase it away. You just watch it, acknowledge its presence, and return your attention to the feeling of your own breath, moving in and out the very rhythm of your being. This is the beginning of the journey toward a different kind of rest. It is a rest that does not depend on the quality of your work, or the success of your day, or the perfection of your internal state. It is a rest that is available to you in any moment, because it is based on the simple, undeniable fact of your own existence. You are here, you are breathing. You are aware of this very moment, and in this awareness there is no need for pigment. There is no need for polish. There is only the light, the canvas, and the quiet, steady truth of a life that is finally beginning to breathe on its own terms. This wisdom is simple, but it is not always easy. It asks us to confront the deepest, most persistent fears we have about our own worth. It asks us to trust that we are enough without the armor. But consider how much energy you have spent trying to be enough, and consider how little peace you have found in the struggle. Is it not time to try the other way? Is it not time to put down the brush, to wipe the pigments from your hands, and to see what happens when you simply stand before the world as you are? You are not being asked to change your circumstances tonight. You are not being asked to fix the things that hurt. You are only being invited to change the way you relate to them. You are being invited to stop adding the second arrow, to stop scrubbing at the wood, and to allow your own history to be a part of you, rather than a project that must be managed. The night is long, and it is deep, and it is the perfect place to begin this practice. Here in the quiet, the brushes are already cold. The studio is already still. You are already home, resting in the very space you were trying so hard to build. Take a moment to let this sink into your chest, not as a thought to be analyzed, but as a warmth to be felt. If you feel a sense of relief, let it wash over you, like water over a tired, dusty surface. If you feel a sense of fear, let that fear be what it is, without trying to hide it under a coat of paint. You are doing the work of a lifetime just by sitting here, in the quiet, and deciding that you are finally ready to be seen, even if only by yourself. This is the first step toward the rest you have been searching for, and you are already taking it, breath by gentle breath, as the night folds you into its soft, patient care. If you are ready, let us step into the quiet studio of your own awareness. You do not need to prepare anything, and you do not need to be in any particular state of mind to begin. Simply allow your body to settle where it is, finding a posture that feels supportive, a shape that doesn't ask you to hold yourself up against the world. Let your breath become the rhythm of the room, moving in and out with the slow, unhurried pace of the night. You are not trying to paint a picture of calm. You are just noticing the texture of your own presence as it sits here, in the dark without any agenda. Begin by bringing your attention to your hands. They have likely spent the day gripping, holding, and doing. carrying the weight of all your tasks and concerns. Perhaps they are still tight, echoing the urgency of the hours you have just left behind. If it feels right, let your fingers uncurl. Let your palms rest open, perhaps against your legs or on the soft surface of the sheets. There is nothing to grasp right now. There is no brush to hold, no pigment to mix, and no surface that requires your intervention. Your hands are free. As you breathe, imagine that your mind is like that small studio where Elias worked. It is a space filled with the unfinished projects of your life, the thoughts that you have been trying to polish, the worries you have been trying to cover up with layers of effort. Choose one of those concerns now. Pick a single worry, a regret, or a fear that has been pacing in the back of your thoughts, waiting for your attention. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to justify it. Just let it appear, like a sketch left on an easel, waiting for you to see it. Notice the color of this thought. Does it feel heavy or does it feel sharp? Does it have a texture, perhaps rough or smooth? Instead of trying to paint over it, simply witness it. Imagine you are holding a small dry cloth and you are standing before this sketch. You are not here to erase it or to hide it under a coat of paint. You are here only to wipe away the dust of your own judgment. As you exhale, notice the urge to change the thought, to make it better, or to hide it away. Just observe that urge as you would observe the dust motes dancing in a beam of morning light. You do not have to move the dust. You do not have to clear the room. You only need to notice that it is there and that you are the one noticing it. Now, take this worry and imagine placing it gently upon the workbench in the center of your mind. You are leaving it there, just as it is, with its edges and its stains, its history and its marks. You are not responsible for solving it this evening. You are not responsible for turning it into something beautiful. You are only responsible for setting it down, so that your own hands can finally be empty. If the thought begins to drift back toward you, if your mind tries to pick up the brush to fix the sketch again, that is perfectly fine. You can simply, with the gentleness of a quiet observer, set it back on the bench. You are not failing if you find yourself picking it up again. You are simply practicing the art of laying things down. Feel the space in your chest as you release the need to manage this worry. Notice the way your heart beats when it is not being asked to carry the extra burden of your critique. There is a deep, resonant honesty in the way you are breathing now. It is the breath of someone who is finally allowed to stop acting, someone who is finally allowed to just exist. The studio of your mind is quiet. The air is cool. There is no one here to judge the work you have done or the work you have left undone. There is only the vast open canvas of the present moment. If you feel a sense of unease, or if the silence feels a bit too large, you might notice that too. That feeling is also part of the texture of your life right now. It is a ripple on the surface of your awareness, and like any ripple, it will eventually smooth out if you do not try to paddle against it. You do not have to be anywhere else. You do not have to be anything else. You are resting in the seat of the observer, and from here, you can see that the thoughts are just passing through, like light traveling across the wall. They are not you. They are not your history, and they are not your identity. They are merely the visitors that have wandered into the studio. As you continue to breathe, allow the light of your awareness to rest upon the raw, unpolished parts of your own story. Think of the things you have felt ashamed of, the moments you have tried to scrub from your own memory. See them now not as failures to be hidden, but as the wood grain of your humanity. These are the places where you have been tested. These are the places where you have grown. They are the marks of a life that has been lived, and they deserve to be held with the same compassion you would offer to a piece of art that has survived the fire. You are allowed to be seen, just as you are. You might feel a subtle shift in your body, a loosening in your neck, a softening in your eyes. This is the weight of the paint beginning to flake away. You are becoming lighter. You are becoming clearer. The urgent, demanding voice that tells you that you must be perfect is becoming a whisper, then a silence. You are reclaiming the territory of your own mind, turning it back into a place of rest rather than a workshop of constant correction. You don't have to reach for any destination. You are already in the only place that matters. You are here, breathing, alive, and fundamentally whole. If a new thought arises, perhaps about tomorrow or the things you still need to accomplish, Treat it with the same gentle curiosity. Do not engage with it. Do not argue with it. Just let it sit on the workbench next to the other sketches. Let it be one of many things in the room that do not require your attention tonight. You are the space that holds the bench, the light, and the sketches. You are not the sketches themselves. You are the canvas that remains when everything else has been set aside. There is a profound freedom in this, isn't there? The freedom to stop being the one who must ensure that every detail is correct. The freedom to stop being the one who must justify every choice. You can let the world spin on its own axis tonight. You can let the tomorrow self worry about the tomorrow work. Right now, you are a person who has done enough, a person who is capable of resting, and a person who is worthy of this quiet, unvarnished grace. As you stay here in this stillness, let your focus gently return to the sensation of the air against your skin. Feel the way your body rests against the support beneath you. Trusting the earth to hold your weight without you needing to press down, you are held. You are supported. You are being invited to sink even deeper into this realization, to allow the texture of your life to be what it is, and to find that underneath the layers of your own striving, there is a profound, quiet beauty that has never been damaged at all. Stay in this space as long as you like. You are home, you are safe. You are exactly where you are meant to be in the unfolding of this long, deep night. Years later, in a valley where the river widened and the mist often lingered until noon, there lived a young woman named Kayo. She was an artist who had become known for a single haunting subject. She painted portraits of herself, but she never finished them. She would spend days layering colors onto the canvas, only to scrape them away with a serrated iron blade when they failed to capture the version of herself she felt she needed to become. Her small studio was a graveyard of abandoned faces, each one scratched and scarred by the blade, representing a version of her own history that she deemed unworthy. Kayo felt that her life was a series of mistakes, a collection of moments that needed to be covered in thick, opaque paint. She lived in a state of perpetual anticipation, believing that if she could just find the right combination of pigments, she would finally be able to look at her own life without flinching. She was talented, but her hands were always shaking, not from lack of skill, but from the immense pressure she applied to every single stroke. In the village nearby, there was an old reclusive monk who lived in a hut constructed of woven reeds. He was a man who had long ago stopped seeking to change the world. He was known for his work with ink and raw, unprimed linen. He did not paint images of people. He painted the shadows that the trees cast upon the earth at different times of day. Kayo had heard stories of him, and one afternoon, driven by an exhaustion she could no longer name, she walked to his hut carrying the portrait she had been working on for 3 years. It was a dense, heavy canvas, covered in so many layers of paint that it felt like an armor she had built against her own presence. She found the monk sitting in his garden, watching the way a dragonfly hovered over a stagnant pond. He did not look surprised to see her. He simply gestured for her to sit upon the dry earth. Kayo placed the portrait down between them. The heavy, dark colors were cracked and brittle. The monk looked at the painting for a long time, his face unreadable. He did not offer praise, and he did not offer critique. He simply asked her what she was hiding beneath the darkest patch of color in the center of the frame. Kayo told him about the mistakes she had made in her youth. She spoke of the grief she had felt when her family moved away, the failures she had suffered in her studies, and the persistent, gnawing feeling that she was never quite enough. Each confession felt like a pull on the thread of her own being. She explained that the paint was her way of protecting the world from the mess of her history. She believed that if she could just make the surface perfect, she would finally be allowed to exist without shame. The monk reached into his robe and pulled out a small, round stone that had been smoothed by the river. He placed it on the corner of her canvas. Then he did something unexpected. He took a bottle of water and a coarse, rough cloth, and he began to scrub a section of her painting. Kayo felt a surge of panic, but she could not move. The water soaked into the dry, cracked layers, softening them until they began to yield. The monk did not stop. He rubbed until the top layer of black was gone, revealing a deep, vibrant blue underneath. Then he scrubbed further until the blue fell away, exposing a jagged, unprimed patch of linen that had been hidden for years. He looked at Kaio and asked her if the linen was broken because it had been covered in paint. Kaio shook her head. He then showed her the cloth. It was stained with the colors of her past, but the cloth itself was clean, having done its work. The monk stood up and walked to his own easel, which held a fresh piece of raw, unprimed linen. He did not use a brush. He dipped his fingers directly into the ink and made a single, wide, sweeping motion across the fabric. It was not a perfect circle, and it was not a balanced shape. It was simply the record of his hand moving through space. He turned back to Kaio and told her that she was trying to paint a portrait of someone who did not exist. He said that the version of herself she was trying to create was made of paint, but the version of herself that was actually alive was the one that felt the frustration of the brush. He told her that to truly see herself, she would have to stop trying to be the painter and start being the one who stood before the canvas, willing to be seen in the light. Kaio spent the rest of the day in that garden. She did not work on her painting. She simply sat, watching the light change, watching the way the shadows of the reeds grew longer and thinner. For the first time, she did not try to fix the mood of the space. She did not try to change her own feelings. When a pang of anxiety rose, she noticed it, but she did not reach for a brush to cover it. She sat with it. She felt the discomfort of her own inadequacy, and she allowed it to sit on the garden path beside her. She noticed that the anxiety was not a monster. It was a feeling, a tightening in her chest, a quickening of her breath. It was a temporary visitor in the landscape of her own awareness. She did not have to make it go away. She did not have to transform it into happiness. She only had to acknowledge that it was there, and then she could return her attention to the sound of the wind moving through the reeds. This was her first moment of transformation. It was a subtle, almost invisible shift, but it changed everything. She realized that the pain she had been trying to hide was actually the source of her depth. The very things she had been ashamed of were the experiences that had taught her to feel, to observe, and to be present. They were the texture of her reality. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, Kaio felt a profound sense of release. She stood up, walked to her portrait, and instead of scraping it, she left it there, leaning against the reed wall of the hut. She did not take it back with her. She walked home in the cool, blue light of the evening, her hands empty, her shoulders finally dropping away from her ears. She felt like a person who had just put down a heavy, soaking wet robe after a long journey through the rain. She did not know what she would paint tomorrow, or if she would paint at all. The future was not something she needed to manage. The present was enough. She walked the path, feeling the ground beneath her feet, feeling the air against her skin, and feeling the quiet, steady rhythm of her own heart. This shift in her behavior was not a grand, dramatic change. She did not wake up the next morning feeling entirely enlightened or devoid of fear. She still felt the old impulses to hide, the old urges to be perfect, and the old habits of self-criticism. But the relationship she had with those impulses had changed. She was no longer their victim. She was their observer. When the familiar sting of shame arrived, she would pause. She would take a breath, letting the air move through her body, and she would simply observe the sensation. She would say to herself, "Here is the feeling of shame, and that is all it is. It is not a command. It is not a truth. It is just a passing wave." This simple act of pausing, of not immediately rushing to cover the feeling with a layer of performance, was the foundation of her new life. She began to find that the moments of peace were not found in the absence of her struggles, but in the heart of them. She could feel overwhelmed and still be kind to herself. She could feel insecure and still remain present. She could make a mistake and not feel the need to burn the canvas. She had learned the wisdom of the linen. The fabric of her life was strong enough to hold the marks, and the beauty was not in the paint, but in the fact that she was here, alive and experiencing it all. Think about how this applies to your own studio, your own private world of thoughts and feelings. How often do you reach for the brush the moment you feel the grit of a difficult emotion? How often do you start applying the layers of defense before you have even allowed yourself to feel the truth of the situation? You have been trained to believe that your feelings are a disaster that needs to be averted. You have been told that a clear, untroubled surface is the only measure of success. But the monk showed us that the surface is a temporary layer. The truth is found in the way the fabric of your heart responds to the experience. You are being invited to stop the cycle of correction. You are being invited to sit with your feelings, just as Kaio sat with her anxiety in the garden, and to observe them without the immediate need to change them. When you feel the weight of your own history, do not reach for the paint. Reach for your breath instead. Let the breath be the water that softens the hardened edges of your self-criticism. Let the awareness be the cloth that wipes away the excess of your own judgment. You do not have to be a master of the craft. You only have to be a witness to your own humanity. This is a quiet, steady process. It does not happen all at once, and it does not require a dramatic change in your personality. It requires only your willingness to pause, to breathe, and to allow yourself to be exactly where you are. You might find that the urge to hide is still strong, and that is okay. You might find that you still feel the need to perform, and that is also okay. Do not judge your progress by how quickly you can stop these habits. Judge it by how often you can pause before you follow them. Judge it by how much room you are willing to give to the raw, unvarnished parts of your own story. The quiet you are seeking is not a state of perfection. It is a state of honesty. It is the ability to look at your own history and see that it is not a series of failures, but a journey of endurance. It is the ability to feel your own vulnerability and see that it is not a weakness, but a gateway to a deeper, more resonant connection with the world around you. You are enough exactly as you are, with all the marks and stains and textures of your living. You do not need the paint to be acceptable. You do not need the armor to be safe. You are the canvas, you are the light, and you are the one who is alive to experience the wonder of it all. As you sit here, in the quiet of the night, notice how the air is still. Notice how the space around you is holding you. Notice how your body is finally being allowed to rest. You have been working so hard for so long, and you have finally reached a place where the work can stop. You can let the brushes fall away. You can let the palette go dry. You can rest in the truth of your own presence, and know that this right here is all that is required of you. You are a work in progress. And that is the most beautiful thing that could ever be said. The exhaustion you feel is not caused by the events of your life alone. It is caused by the way your mind immediately turns every experience into a project that requires a solution. When something happens, a regret that surfaces, an interaction that left you feeling hollow, or a fear about what tomorrow might bring, your mind does not simply observe it. It treats the event like a stain on a canvas. It immediately begins to scramble for the right colors to hide it. It rehearses arguments, it calculates possibilities, and it critiques your own responses until the raw memory is completely buried beneath a thick, heavy layer of intellectual labor. This is the mechanism of suffering. It is not the experience itself that drains your spirit. It is the relentless automatic need to repaint the past and pre-paint the future, ensuring that the image remains exactly as you think it ought to be. Think about the way you approach your own history. You carry a mental scraper, always searching for the parts of your life that you deem unacceptable. When you find them, you apply a fresh, opaque coat of denial or justification, hoping that if you hide the grain of your truth, you will finally feel safe. But this process is fundamentally at odds with the nature of a living heart. The heart is not a static painting. It is a shifting, breathing, textured reality. When you try to control the composition of your own character, you are essentially trying to freeze a river in place. You are fighting against the natural movement of experience, and that fight is where all of your anxiety, all of your overthinking, and all of your heaviness originate. The Buddha often compared our resistance to the act of trying to hold a handful of water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it leaks through your fingers. We do this with our thoughts and our emotions. We fear the uncertainty of our own nature, so we squeeze. We grab hold of our past mistakes, hoping that by analyzing them over and over, we can finally turn them into something that no longer hurts. But pain is not something you can solve like a math problem. It is something you must inhabit, observe, and eventually allow to pass. When you add the layer of self-judgment, when you tell yourself you shouldn't be feeling this way, or that you should have moved on by now, you are creating a second, deeper wound. You are not just dealing with the initial sting of a difficult memory. You are dealing with the shame of having the memory at all. This is the great paradox of the path toward peace. We often think that we must reach a state where we no longer feel discomfort. We think that the goal is to paint a canvas that has no marks, no flaws, and no history of struggle. But a canvas without marks is a canvas that has never been used. It is a canvas that has never been part of the world. The wisdom of the Zen masters teaches us that the marks are the beauty. They are the evidence that you have been present, that you have dared to engage with the world, and that you have held your shape despite the forces that sought to bend you. When you stop fighting the marks, you stop the internal war. You find that you are not the painter who is responsible for the final image. You are the canvas itself, and you have been strong enough to hold every color you have ever experienced. Consider how much of your daily life is spent rehearsing the future, trying to paint a scene that hasn't even happened yet. You worry about how you will appear to others, or how you will handle a challenge that may never arrive. You are effectively applying layers of heavy, dark pigment to a canvas that is currently completely blank. You are tiring yourself out with a masterpiece of disaster, all in the name of being prepared. But look at where you are right now. The room is quiet. The air is still. There is no challenge here. There is only the breath. When you return to the present, you realize that the future you were painting was never real. It was a projection, a thick, artificial layer that only served to block the light of this moment. Self-judgment is perhaps the thickest, most opaque color on your palette. It is the pigment that refuses to let any light through. Every time you think to yourself that you are not enough, or that you have failed, you are applying a coat of this dark, heavy substance over the texture of your own humanity. You are hiding the very things that make you real. Compassion is the act of wiping that dark paint away. It is not about pretending that you are perfect. It is about acknowledging that you are human, and that being human involves making mistakes, feeling pain, and occasionally feeling lost. When you offer yourself this compassion, you are not failing to hold yourself to a standard. You are finally seeing the canvas for what it is, and you are allowing the texture to be seen. You might wonder how you can remain active in the world if you stop trying to control everything. You might fear that if you let go of the brush, your life will become messy or disorganized. But remember that Elias and Caio did not stop living. They did not retreat into a vacuum. They continued to work, but their work had changed. It was no longer a frantic attempt to create a perfect mask. It was an expression of their presence. When you stop trying to control every outcome, you gain something far more valuable than a perfect image. You gain the ability to respond to life as it actually unfolds, rather than as you fear it might. You gain the clarity to see what is necessary and the freedom to let go of what is not. This shift does not mean you become passive. It means you become responsive. When you are no longer blinded by the thick layers of your own fear, you can see the world clearly. You can see the needs of those around you, and you can see the needs of your own heart. You can act with wisdom because your actions are no longer driven by the desperate need to defend an artificial version of yourself. You are no longer acting to build an image. You are acting to serve the truth of the moment. This is a much lighter, much more sustainable way of living. It is the difference between carrying a heavy, layered frame on your back and simply walking through the world with your hands open. There is a deep psychological relief in accepting that your pain is not an identity. We often fall into the trap of believing that our history is who we are. We think that because we have suffered, we are a suffering person. We think that because we have failed, we are a failure. But these are just stories we have painted over the reality of our being. Underneath all of those stories, there is a clear, open awareness that has never been touched by the events of your life. That awareness is not a victim, and it is not a judge. It is the space in which all of your experiences occur. When you rest in that awareness, you can see the pain for what it is, a temporary pattern of sensation and thought, and you can know that it is not you. You are the one who is witnessing the pattern. You are the canvas that remains when the patterns shift and change. This realization is the ultimate release of control. You no longer have to spend your energy protecting the identity you have built. You can let the identity be as fluid as the light on the wall. You can let the colors of your life be bright or dark, thick or thin, because you know that none of them define the canvas. They are just the temporary expressions of your journey, and they are allowed to be here. As the night moves deeper and the world outside the window grows quieter, let yourself settle into this understanding. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to have a clear, polished view of your future. You only need to be present with the texture of your life as it is right now. You are doing enough. The effort you have put into your own evolution has not been wasted. It has brought you to this threshold. It has brought you to this moment of realization. You are ready to let the brush rest. You are ready to see the canvas, and you are ready to be the light that is held within it. Think of your mind as a studio that has been cluttered with the tools of your own defense. You have spent so much time sharpening your blades and mixing your pigments that you have forgotten what it is like to sit in the center of the room and simply breathe. But the room is still there, beneath all the tools. The foundation is still there, beneath all the layers of artifice, and it is a sturdy, beautiful foundation. It is a place where you can safely be yourself without any need to perform, without any need to explain, and without any need to polish your scars. You are being invited to stop the editing process for the duration of this night. Whatever you think is unfinished, leave it unfinished. Whatever you think is flawed, leave it flawed. Whatever you think is a mistake, leave it exactly as it is. You do not have the power to change the past, and you do not have the wisdom to predict the future. All you have is the capacity to be present, and that is more than enough. Let the weight of the work fall away from your shoulders. Let the tightness in your chest loosen into the soft, quiet space of the night. You are not a masterpiece to be judged by the world. You are a human life, unfolding in its own perfect, messy, beautiful way. And that is a miracle that needs no pigment at all. This wisdom does not belong only to the quiet gardens of old stories or the stillness of a midnight studio. It is meant for the very moments when your life feels most hurried, most demanding, and most prone to the old habits of the brush. Consider how often you reach for that mental palette during a simple afternoon. Perhaps you are waiting for a message, your eyes scanning the glowing screen, your mind already painting a masterpiece of neglect or misunderstanding. You are adding layer after layer of interpretation to a silence that may mean nothing at all. In that moment, you are not just waiting for a text. You are actively painting a version of your own worth based on the behavior of someone else. But what if you could pause? What if you could notice the brush hovering in your hand? Feel the sharp urge to fix or explain, and choose, just for a breath, to put it down. You do not have to stop caring, and you do not have to stop wanting connection. You only have to stop using the weight as a canvas for your own insecurities. When you lie awake in the dark, replaying a mistake from years ago, you are visiting an old, dried canvas that you have already painted 1,000 times. You are trying to scrape it clean with the blunt blade of your own regret, hoping that if you polish it enough, the memory will lose its sting. But the memory is not a surface to be cleared. It is a part of your history, a texture that has shaped who you are. The suffering here comes from the repetition, from the way you keep adding more paint to a picture that is already finished. Practice letting the memory stay as it is. Do not try to brighten it with excuses, and do not try to darken it with shame. See it as an object on the shelf of your mind, a piece of your past that has already done its work. You can acknowledge that you were different then, and you can offer yourself the grace of a human who was simply doing the best they could with the awareness they had. Many of us go through our days wearing a smile while feeling heavy, like an artist who has been told they must keep painting even when the canvas is ripped. You might feel a constant, quiet pressure to be a version of yourself that is always capable, always composed, and always ready to produce. This is the weight of the performance. It is the exhaustion of keeping up appearances when your heart is craving a moment of true, honest rest. You can start to practice small acts of authenticity. You can admit to yourself, perhaps in the safety of your own thoughts, that you are feeling tired. You do not need to announce this to the world, but you can acknowledge it to your own heart. When you stop pretending, you stop the energy drain of the mask. You give yourself the freedom to be a person who is currently navigating a difficult stretch, rather than a person who is obligated to be an endless fountain of success. You may also find yourself checking the phone for reassurance. looking for someone else to validate the value of your work or the worth of your presence. This is like turning to the world and asking if your painting is good enough. But the world is a restless gallery. Its opinions shift like the light, and its favor is never guaranteed. The approval you are really seeking is not external. It is the internal recognition that you are allowed to exist without the need for constant validation. Next time you feel that pull toward the screen, stop. Feel the emptiness in your hands, and know that it is not a lack of value. It is the space of your own integrity, waiting for you to occupy it. You are the one who knows your own struggle. You are the one who knows your own strength. That is the only witness that truly matters. Feeling behind in life is another common way we add extra layers of anxiety to the natural pace of our growth. We compare our current state to the polished public versions of others, and we feel that we have somehow failed to complete the composition. But life is not a race to a finish line. It is an unfolding of the seasons. Some periods are for preparation, some are for growth, and some are for the quiet, dormant work that happens beneath the surface. When you feel the sting of comparison, notice it. Do not let it dictate your pace. Remember the reed hut and the raw, unprimed linen. There is no standard you are failing to meet, because you are the only one walking your path. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are, and that is where the work of your life must take place. Trying to control a relationship is perhaps the most delicate work you will ever encounter. We often want to curate the behavior of those we love, hoping that if they act in certain ways, we will finally be able to feel secure. We add layers of expectation. We paint over their autonomy with our own needs, and we wonder why the connection feels strained. True connection is not a painting we create. It is a space we hold. When you care for someone, try to hold them with an open hand, not a clenched fist. Let them be who they are, with all their own marks and textures, and see if that does not create a deeper, more resilient bond than the one built on your efforts to shape them. You do not have to manage the people you love. You only have to be present with them. When you feel guilty for resting, you are telling yourself that your value is tied to your productivity. You are treating yourself like an instrument of labor rather than a human life. This is the hardest layer to remove, because it is so deeply woven into the fabric of our modern world. But rest is not a luxury. It is a fundamental necessity, as essential as the canvas is to the art. You do not have to earn your right to be still. You do not have to have a list of accomplishments to justify your moments of quiet. Your existence is already valid. Your need for stillness is a natural part of being alive. When the guilt arises, acknowledge it, but do not obey it. Choose to rest, not because you have completed your tasks, but because your body and heart are asking for it. This practice of presence is a muscle you can build, day by day, in the smallest of choices. It is the choice to pause before you speak, letting your words come from a place of awareness rather than a place of defense. It is the choice to breathe into the tightness you feel in your chest, rather than assuming it is a sign that something is wrong. It is the choice to walk through your day with the knowledge that you are not a finished product, but a living process. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be human. When you release the demand for perfection, you find that the world does not collapse. In fact, it opens up. You begin to see the beauty in the people around you. Not because they are perfect, but because they, too, are carrying their own textures and marks. You begin to see the world as it is, not as you want it to be. Everything you need to navigate this life is already within you. The capacity to be present, the strength to witness your own experience, and the wisdom to know when to put down the brush. These are not things you acquire from the outside. They are the latent qualities of your own awareness, waiting for you to notice them. You have spent so much time looking for the right technique, the right teacher, or the right layer of paint to make you feel okay. But the peace you are looking for is found in the very act of stopping. It is found in the moment you realize that you have been holding a heavy brush for no reason at all. It is found in the quiet, simple recognition that you are the canvas, and you are already enough. As the hours move on, let the weight of these lessons settle into the quiet corners of your mind. You do not have to carry them like a list of instructions. You can let them be like the grain of the wood, a foundation that is always there, supporting you even when you are not actively thinking about it. You are becoming someone who knows how to be still. You are becoming someone who knows how to listen to the breath. You are becoming someone who knows how to trust the unfolding of the moment, even when it is uncertain. This is the work of a life, and you have taken the first, most important steps. You are not walking this path alone. The wisdom of the ages is here, the quiet of the night is here, and you are here, exactly where you need to be. The studio is at rest, the light is soft, the colors of your day are fading, and you are finally ready to be still. The studio is quiet now. The light that once bathed the work in sharp, demanding clarity has softened into the deep, indigo hues of the approaching night. The brushes are clean and dry, resting in their jars, no longer reaching for the canvas. The palette, once so crowded with colors meant to mask and hide, is clear. You have spent your time here looking at the canvas of your own life, witnessing the lines and the marks that make up the texture of your being. You have realized that these marks are not failures to be covered by a desperate hand. They are the record of your presence in the world. They are the places where you have met the wind and the rain, the heat and the cold, and remained standing. Let your breath move through you, like a gentle breeze in an empty room. There is no longer any need for the pigment of your defenses. You can let the layers you have spent so long applying finally settle and fall away. Imagine the heavy coat of your own judgment, the thick paint of your self-criticism, slowly flaking off and drifting down to the floor, leaving behind only the simple, sturdy linen of your own heart. It feels different, does it not? To be stripped of the need to be a perfect work of art, to simply be the surface upon which life happens. This is the truth of your nature. It is deep, it is resilient, and it is entirely enough. Feel the support beneath you, holding your weight with the same indifference that the earth holds the trees. You do not need to pull yourself up. You do not need to hold your own frame. The work of maintaining the appearance of a masterwork is finished. You are allowed to be a work in progress, a sketch that is never finished, a landscape that is constantly changing. The fear that you must be a finalized, polished piece has been released into the stillness of this room. Your hands are empty, and your mind is finally letting go of the need to control the brush. The night air enters your lungs, cool and patient. Each time you breathe out, imagine another small, tight knot of striving dissolving into the shadows. The studio of your mind, which was once filled with the frantic noise of correction, is now a place of profound and sacred emptiness. It is a space where nothing is expected of you. You do not have to plan for tomorrow. You do not have to review the events of the day. The canvas is blank, not because you have erased your life, but because you have stopped trying to judge it. You are returning to the simplicity of the linen, the raw foundation that carries every stroke and every stain with an equal, quiet grace. You are not a tragedy that requires a repair. You are not a masterpiece that requires a guard. You are a human life, moving through the cycles of light and dark, and you are worthy of this rest. The brushes you once held so tightly are now forgotten. The blades you used to scrape away your history are silent. There is only the rhythm of your heartbeat, a steady, pulsing reminder that you are alive. This pulse is the only rhythm you need to follow tonight. It asks for nothing. It promises nothing but its own persistence. Let your eyes grow heavy, not because you are forcing them to close, but because the need to watch over the studio has finally vanished. The room is safe. The doors are locked. The world outside will continue its turning, but you are no longer responsible for the colors it paints upon the horizon. You have done your part. You have shown up to the work. You have faced the canvas, and you have learned the wisdom of the linen. Now, you are free to sink into the deep, velvet dark that knows how to hold you without asking for anything in return. Imagine the texture of your life as a soft, worn fabric, safe and familiar. You have carried it through many miles, and it has served you well. It does not need to be new. It does not need to be unblemished. Its beauty is found in the very fact that it has been worn and touched and lived upon. It is a story told in thread and color, and tonight the story is allowed to pause. You are drifting toward a place where the concepts of right and wrong, success and failure, beautiful and ugly, no longer have any meaning. There is only the quiet. There is only the breath. Feel the heaviness in your limbs, a natural and welcome release of the tension that kept you standing so upright. Your bones are resting. Your muscles are yielding to the weight of the night. You are becoming like the mountain painter, watching the fog roll across the peaks, seeing the world as a shifting, impermanent dance. You are the witness to the dance, and that is enough. You do not need to catch the light. You do not need to hold the color. You only need to be present as the night moves through you, refreshing the spirit and softening the sharp edges of the day. Everything you have carried, the regrets, the questions, the quiet fears, is being held by the vast open space of the night. You do not need to keep them in your pockets. You do not need to keep them in your mind. The silence is large enough to contain all of them, and it is patient enough to let them dissolve. You are safe to let go of the heavy tools you have been carrying. They served a purpose once, but they are no longer necessary. The morning will come in its own time, with its own light, and you will meet it as you meet this night, with a heart that has learned to be still. You are returning home, not to a place, but to the quiet awareness that has been with you through every stroke of the brush. It is a home that cannot be broken, a studio that cannot be ruined, and a canvas that can never be torn by the mistakes of the past. It is the peace that existed before you ever tried to define who you were, and it will be there long after the definitions have faded away. Stay here in the quiet as long as you like. Let the world grow dim. Let the thoughts grow quiet. Let the breath be your only guide. The studio is empty, save for the presence of your own deep, unvarnished truth. And as the dark fully wraps around you, like a warm, thick cloth, consider this. If the peace you have been seeking was never a painting you had to finish, but the very canvas that has been holding your life all along, then what could you possibly be afraid of losing tonight?